Hi there. Thank you for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Peter Bevan. I manage the global sales and marketing relationship with Amazon Web Services. Yeah, I must admit, I do feel like I've got one of the funnest jobs that I've ever had. I get to work not only with Amazon, one of the most innovative companies in the world, but also their amazing partners and customers. And so today I'm really excited to have both Footasylum, a retail company from the UK, as well as Peak.ai, which is one of Amazon's leading machine learning partners. So for those of you who don't know, Intel actually have been working with Amazon now for over 10 years, designing custom silicon to integrate into their services and instances. That's across both storage, networking, and compute. But the hardware we provide is only as good as the software that's running on top of it. So we do a huge amount of work to optimize that software on top of AWS's infrastructure. So 2 years ago, you may have seen Amazon launch SageMaker, their machine learning service. Since that launch, we've actually seen huge improvements in optimizing the software stack on top of it to deliver up to a 7x performance improvement versus when we first launched that service. Now, it's made machine learning a hell of a lot easier using SageMaker, but what we've really seen is when partners start to innovate on top of that platform, they're able to really offer benefits to end customers. And so through our collaboration with Peak, we've actually been able to help them optimize their software stack to run on that latest generation of Intel technology. They've seen up to a 28% performance improvement in their machine learning workloads, as well as up to a 10x TCO benefit. Now, I'm really excited to have both Tom and Richard from Peak join me on stage to talk about how they've built their platform on top of AWS and what that's doing to their end customers. Thank you.
Afternoon, everybody. Nice to be here. I'm Richard Potter. I'm the CEO at Peak, and we are, as Peter said, a global machine learning company headquartered in the UK. And Tom is head of commerce at Footasylum, and between us, hopefully, got a very interesting presentation for you guys today on not only AI and machine learning in a practical sense, but looking wider at the trends at play in the retail industry and what that means for modern retailers, what the opportunity is for them, and how you can use AI to take advantage of that. So we should have something for everyone here, some broader industry trend and perspectives, all the way through to more detailed technical content on how you would do that in your own tech stack. Okay. Tom's going to start with an intro into the retail landscape, and then we'll flow from there.
Cool. Thanks, Rich. Thanks, Peter. It's great to be here to get a chance to show some of this off that we've been doing. So a bit of a scary slide to start with. This is a reality at the moment for some. So notably since around 2008, we've been going through this sort of era of aggressive bifurcation in retail where web and digital have been pulling in one direction, and stores and bricks and mortar business have been pulling in another. And through that 9, 10, 11-year period, we've obviously seen some dynamic web growth that for bricks and mortar retailers who have struggled to evolve and adapt, it's left them with their heads in a bit of a spin. Increasing sort of unrelenting pressure on profitability for retailers, rising fixed costs, etc., has seen actually us lose a few iconic names from the retail sort of ecosystem. We won't name and shame anyone, but we were joking. We saw a giraffe named Jeffrey still looking for work recently. But I can humbly say that at Footasylum, we thought, no, we're not having that actually. So we've taken some moves to embrace AI and ML, and we're moving forward with it because it's actually not all doom and gloom. Actually, as this graphic on the screen sort of really quite beautifully illustrates, retail spending has never been higher in actual fact. So consumers are consuming still, and they've never been doing more of it. So it is out there, essentially opportunity. But we need to understand about consumer behaviors, the consumer journeys that are changing, the channels that they consume on. And we've been using AI and machine learning to help adapt to that. A couple of really cool sound bites, takeaways, if you will, is that businesses that have adopted AI are growing 30% faster than businesses without. And it isn't just vanity either. They're growing with 50% higher profit margins as well, which is super cool, really. It totally validates that sometimes a leap of faith, but in line with a wider strategy, really cool commercial outputs from it. We have a saying at Footasylum, and it's relentless forward progress. We have to be always striving to make different moves in order to future-proof our business. And we've got a little bit of a video here to give you a bit of an idea on what we are at Footasylum. Okay, it's much better just watching videos, isn't it, than slides sometimes. So a little bit more information just on Footasylum, because there'll be many of you in the room who would be forgiven for maybe not knowing fully who we are. We've been going since around 2005, and we've got to just shy of 70 bricks and mortar locations in the UK. A busy website, and we create our own brands as well, and we're intent on becoming part of our consumers' lives rather than waiting for them to come and find us. And we are endorsed by our community as a result of that. We think we understand our consumers, and in the modern retail ecosystem, understanding our consumers has led to us with a requirement to be better connected, essentially, in terms of how we interact and deliver on our promise to our consumers. So that brings us through to a bit of the sort of topic of today's chat, and we've distilled it into the 3 C's. So it starts with context, and this is the sort of feeling of personalization for your consumer. We're ultimately looking to have one-to-one relationships with our consumers entirely at scale across our entire databases. There's an increasing demand and expectancy from consumers in this day and age where you expect a degree of personalization. Convenience, number 2. This is about making sure that if we've wooed our consumers and created some demand that the product is in the right place at the right time, then this could be on the website or it could be across our network of stores. You know, not delivering on that promise in the respect of meeting the demand creates leakage and inefficiency for us, but also disappoints our consumer and leads to a bad experience. And then control, for me, this is super important. It's the new battleground in retail for me. This is about the last mile fulfillment to the consumer. So we're talking about sort of next day, same day delivery, click and collect, deliver to store. It's absolutely vital now. We need to make sure that we'll all have done this probably. If you're shopping for something on a website, you get to the checkout, and the reason that you couldn't get it delivered where and when you wanted, that just needs to go away as a reason, essentially, and it's hard. It's hard to fix that. So internally as well, the marketing element of it in context is a challenge. It's not supposed to be easy, actually, so we need to address how we can have those relationships at scale, and that's one of the big ways we started on our journey with AI and machine learning to help deliver that. Merchandising, we've actually got a pretty sophisticated merchandising setup at Footasylum where we we merchandise all of our stores in a hyper-local way, meeting demand geographically, hopefully. But bringing some AI into that is integral moving forward. And then the supply chain, as we've discussed, is increasing in complexity like all the time. So it's, as I said, it's hard to knit these three together. Some numbers in Footasylum's world, I can't be too candid, frustratingly, but these are like best case in terms of complexity, so these are like the lower end. So we've got over 1 million active customers on our website, in excess of 60 stores, 25,000 products at any one time in our catalogue, 3 commerce channels, so our stores, our website, and increasingly our app is a really cool channel as well. And then the Omnichannel fulfillment, as we've said, it's of a myriad of things and continues to enhance. So this is where I'll hand over to Richard, who hopefully, I suspect, may have a solution for this.
Hopefully. Thanks, Tom. Okay, cool. So the next part of the session is just going to focus on how AI can then, therefore, support that connected retail imperative that we all want to take our companies on. Well, firstly, we can talk about how AI does that at a high level. We would say that the first way it helps is obviously to make sense of data. There's a lot of data being produced by the modern retailer through e-commerce and all the digital touch points. But also we're able to capture a lot of data in stores from beacons, from loyalty apps, and so on and so forth. There's all sorts of extra data that we can process today, and you need algorithms to help you make sense of that. Secondly, you need to connect workflows and functions throughout your organization. So on Tom's slide, he showed you how marketing links to merchandising and planning, and that then links into the supply chain. AI can help you automate at scale workflows throughout that value chain, and that's one of the big benefits of adopting machine learning and AI in the value chain. It can't be done without it. Otherwise, you've got to join those functions up manually, and in a complex world, that's virtually impossible. Thirdly, it supports those 3 C's exactly. So we're able then to deliver the consumer experience that modern customers want. And then finally, in doing that, we're optimizing both demand and supply, which from a pure business perspective means higher margins and faster revenue growth. Okay. We're now going to talk a little bit about the tech stack. So that's all great in theory. But let's get into like how we think you can do this from a technology perspective and taking it from that hype into reality. Well, firstly, it's important to say the tech stack is complicated, but hopefully made simple by the combination of Intel, AWS, and ourselves. At a sort of fundamental level, we have processing power delivered to us by Intel's chipsets, notably the C5 chipsets. They are supporting a number of the services that are needed from the AWS cloud, everything from storage to compute to specialist services around SageMaker and other things. And then on top of that, Peak has built a full stack AI system, which we're going to talk about today, that delivers business solutions and outcomes, but also packages up everything you need into one SaaS application in order to do this at scale. Conceptually, you can see that as a value chain in its own right. Okay, so starting on the left here with the computational power of Intel through the cloud services to the Peak system, then into Footasylum as the forward-thinking retailer, and then on to delivering that customer experience. Okay, so as I said, we're going to start by talking about here the Peak AI system. So conceptually, think of the Peak system as a full stack AI system giving you everything you need to do AI at scale in the enterprise. It actually becomes, in effect, the brain within the business and connects to all those other business systems and automates processes and tells them what to do, and therefore becomes like this intelligence layer in your existing software ecosystem. It means you don't have to swap out CRM systems, email service providers, ERP systems, and so on. You can deploy a brain to make everything else smarter. And that brain looks a little bit like this. The full stack means it has 3 key layers to it. It has an infrastructure layer, so all the storage and compute and security and all management of that. The workflow, and that is your end-to-end data workflow through raw data to prediction, and then the business solutions that are delivering outcomes in the real world. And that system then has to be able to connect to those other products. So at the bottom it shows you the systems of record, such as your ERP system, systems of engagement, such as your website or your CRM system, and then data sources, be that data lakes, data warehouses, or other third-party sources of data. Okay. So we're going to concentrate on each of these three layers. First, the AI infrastructure, which is that storing and unifying data in this secure and scalable way. Then the AI studio, as we call it, which is managing the workflow to configure solutions, process data, run the models, et cetera, et cetera. And then the solution layer, which, like I say, supports the actual business outcomes. So starting with the infrastructure, I think a core almost tenet of this entire concept is that you need seamless integration. So the infrastructure layer within the Peak system has to give you this ability to connect to any kind of data source, pull data, stream data, but also then connect back to those data sources to connect and make continuous workflows and automation. That means connecting to databases, on-prem, in cloud, other SaaS applications, or other workflow products. It comes with effectively 3 key advantages to having all of this together in one product. The first is you're going to get data ingestion and processing at scale. That's what you need it to be able to do. So that means in the Peak systems case, the real-time streaming of enterprise data sets. The modern retailer produces a lot of data, and a lot of it has to be processed in real time. So all the things that are happening on your website, what the engagement in marketing content, and all of that kind of stuff. So that is done on Apache Spark in our case. That's the technology we're using under the hood. But we're also doing storage on S3 and Redshift, depending on the solution, the data set, the type, and so on and so forth. And then, importantly, this part of the system, this processing part, has to be able to handle multiple workflows at scale. If you think about it, it's making hundreds of predictions in real time all the time. Those workflows need to be carefully managed. So all of those things, that's sort of advantage number 1. The second advantage is that you're kind of getting ML ops in a box, almost, if you want to call it that. You guys probably know that this is a bit of an emergent market, or emergent discipline, really, machine learning operations or AI ops. We think that you can put a lot of the sort of infrastructure into one product to cut down on that effort within your own organizations. And in our systems case, that means it's cloud native, built from the ground up for AI ML. It supports all open source tools and frameworks that you would expect, so TensorFlow, et cetera, et cetera. But then, importantly, having several instance types to fit various ML use cases. So the easy configuration of those workspaces and giving horsepower and grunt to the system as you need it. And that's all pre-configured and very flexible. And then the third sort of big advantage to having this infrastructure layer in the system is you're getting enterprise-grade security and control. So everything built to best practice standards, controls for the identification of data, understanding what's personal or sensitive data, but also handling it in the right way, making sure that you've got role-based access controls. Certain people have certain rights, others don't, and that's a big important thing when it comes to enterprise ML rollouts, and that fits into the governance and the auditing part as well. So, really important part of the system, although certainly not the most glamorous. Okay, so those advantages of that infrastructure layer can be sort of summarized if you think about the AI lifecycle. So any of you in the room here who are familiar with the domain will know, if you go like left to right on this process flow, this lifecycle, you're going to start your AI or ML journey as a business by doing some discovery. So thinking about what does my business do, what are the processes, how could we use prediction and AI to make a difference. Once you start to think about that exploration, you'll prioritize your ideas. And as you prioritize your ideas, you're going to then move into looking at the feasibility, maybe looking at some data, maybe trying to quantify it and building a business case and some KPIs around it. That's how we would recommend you guys start your journeys. That will sort of give you a roadmap. And once you've started your roadmap, you're into building and configuring your solution. So straight into exploring data, straight into preparing it, training models, et cetera, evaluating their performance. Then you've got to deploy and run them and orchestrate them. And then as they are rolled out into production, you've got to optimize them and manage them. So that's your life cycle just for one application. It requires a lot of resource to do this, to do it yourself with your own team, requires a lot of resources. So think about data scientists, data engineers, software engineers, AI or ML ops, as well as business operations needed to all manage each of these three stages. And these little boxes here just sort of represent the maybe the relative weighting of those functions. So a lot of people, I think, would just think of it as a data science task, right? Get some data scientists in, but it's more than just that. Obviously, we have to provide them with a lot of infrastructure, and that's where the wider team come in. Not only do you need a lot of resources, but you need to invest in technology. So if you're building this yourself, most companies have an average of 7 or 8 separate pieces of software or services that they're using to build their own sort of environments or platforms. And that can be everything from like ELT to an ETL tooling, data streaming tools, data warehouses, in-memory databases, as well as your machine learning pipeline tools, your ML workbench itself, all of that kind of stuff. So you've got a big investment in tech and resources, and you've got to build it yourself, and that takes time. So with the Peak system and the infrastructure layer in the AI system, we're effectively giving you that like a full stack AI system, but from an infrastructure perspective, it means you can cut out the need to build all of that yourself. You've just got a system that is everything you need to get going with enterprise AI, which I think the key bit here is speed. Speed and cost, total cost of ownership is reduced, speed is increased, and you can get to creating business value quicker. Okay, so that's the key advantage really at the infrastructure layer. So now we're going to move on to talk about the middle bit, which is AI Studio. And AI Studio is, I would sort of think of it as like the core, like the engine here within the entire system. It is the part of the system that is your machine learning like workflow management. It allows you to do everything from connecting to data sources, bringing it in, ingesting it, setting up how those jobs work, how you're handling that raw data that's coming in, enables you to transform that data, merge it obviously, and unify it into a data set that you can then use to train models, configure solutions. And once you've done that, orchestrate them and make sure that those workflows are sequenced and that they fit and they work. And then that you can set up your APIs and forward integrate into your other products. So that's that part of the system, all in the same SaaS application, and it's sort of also customizable from an integration perspective and a UI point of view. So even though a lot of the models and all of the AI solutions are there and available to use, every business is different, and you'll want to look at those predictions in a different way. So having the ability to customize the UI and the way in which you're viewing your data is also like really important. So those are the key features of that part of the system. And we're going to move on now to chatting about the solutions themselves. So this is the part of the overall tech stack you need to build, or you need to think about, or use in the case of our system that creates the end outcome. I think, like in my mind, enterprise AI isn't just machine learning. It's a prediction, and machine learning creating that prediction with an optimization on top, that drives like action and automation, and it's that at scale that is making the difference between the old way of doing things in business and the new way of doing things, and that's what this part of the system is all about. So there are three key solutions within the stack, and they each support a different part of the business, as Tom outlined before, to deliver the context, convenience, and control that your consumers demand. You're talking about supporting marketing, merchandising and planning, and supply chain and operations. And that's what these three different solutions all do. So customer AI is all focused on hyper-personalization and driving sales and product recommendations, while demand AI is focusing on forecasting demand, making sure you've got the right product in the right place at the right time, and then supply AI is like, how are you fulfilling that and optimizing your distribution centers and your logistics networks. And we're going to talk through each and then give you some examples of the impact it's made in the real world with Footasylum's business. So customer AI, let's start there, as it's kind of the start of the customer journey. This is a part of the system that we think is, well, pretty cool, because what it's doing is it's pulling together everything you have, all the data you've got on your customers in one place, and creating this unified view of those individual customers. But then it's making hundreds of specific predictions in real time about every single one of them. And we call that a predictive customer view. That set of predictions is like the baseline and the foundation for everything. But as I said a minute ago, you have to do something with that. You have to optimize on top, and the optimization here is hyper-personalization. We're talking about, at scale, personalizing communications with every single one of your customers. That means you can have a one-to-one relationship with those customers. You can talk to them as individuals. As Tom said, that's what Footasylum are trying to do. That's what every retailer should try and do. Because if you can talk to someone as an individual, you're far more likely to have a relevant conversation with them. And if you're having a relevant conversation with them, they're going to be more engaged and they're going to become more loyal customers by doing that. So that hyper-personalization gives you a few key benefits. It means all your messaging is personalized. That's an obvious use case. Also, product recommendations on your website, within your emails and your communications. But then also, the third area here is, as shown in this chart, is driving that into acquiring new customers. So all the learnings you've got from your existing customers and applying that to acquiring new customers through social media, through PPC, and optimizing how that works to get more better customers to the front door, effectively, of your retail operation. And the outcomes should be fairly self-explanatory. That engagement, that relevance should drive loyalty and engagement, and that's going to drive sales. It's going to help improve your loyalty, reduce churn. It's going to increase digital campaign revenues, as well as increase your return on advertising spend. And those are the kind of benefits that Footasylum have seen.
Yeah, so that's a picture of another one of our stores there. We started working with Peak in January 2018, and the onboarding was relatively straightforward. They ingest our data at regular intervals, and they're getting more regular as we actually optimize what we do on our side. We're looking at a real-time integration not too far away. And we wanted all of our data in one place, which is what Peak has primarily allowed us to do. So it's unified everything in one place. So we've got a single customer view, so we can start, doing stuff with it then. So what we, and I'm using the word we, obviously, I didn't physically do it, but start to run the machine learning algorithms over our database. And what we started doing shortly after the onboarding, we were straight into running campaigns with some segmentation that's obviously led by this AI and ML, and allowing us to deliver more personalized communications to our customers. One thing I was sort of hypothesizing with our CRM team is actually, could we send less better marketing to our customers? So if they're measuring when they're in market, so we maybe need to tune up the messaging and because we know they're ready to purchase, but also with the predictive view that Peak gives us, understand when someone is not in market, and maybe we warm them up with a different type of message so as not to not to irritate our customers, and we're talking to them at the right times with the right products. And in the early forays with this, we saw a 28% uplift in email revenue, which is really cool, and it totally validated that this was something that we were going to be exploring more and more. That led us then to using the same segmentation methods, that is continually learning with the feedback loop that we're putting back into it, to leverage Facebook and Instagram, so social media marketing here. And we're quite proud that our KPIs come out well above the industry average. We've got quite a tight operation, but we actually increased our own endeavors by 10 times, so much as so we thought it was a mistake at the start, and it turns out it wasn't. It's a real thing. ROAS there is like for those who are maybe not as familiar with that, is a sort of universally used marketing metric for return on ad spend. So we were like blown away with that, and it's become sort of structurally integral to all of our outgoing digital marketing efforts, but also really cool that it's just embedded in the BAU, the business as usual processes. It's not any more work, it's just adding superb efficiency to what we do and massive effectiveness as well. And it's a big part of our culture of how we drive commerce from our existing and new customers now.
Hello, hello. There we go. We're back. And those numbers are amazing, really. If you think about it, they're sort of like P&L changing from a results perspective. You're effectively saying there that you're acquiring your customers for 10 times less. So for every, common for a big retailer, for every $1 million you're spending on acquiring customers, you're getting 10 times as many customers to your front door, or you could spend 10 times less and get the same amount of customers. It's like really, really big difference there. But then also the effectiveness of the communications and getting more out of your customer base is really important too. So you should think about using it on both new and retained customers to achieve these sort of numbers. Moving through the value chain into demand AI. Demand AI all sort of targets the convenience element for the consumer. So we're talking here about, in a similar way to customer AI, making predictions, but at a product level instead of a customer level. And those predictions are about demand. So we're getting everything we know about products. So that can be not just like what you've sold of them in the past, so not just transactions, but also like the taxonomies, the metadata around those products, because product ranges change fast. So being able to make predictions across a range as fast moving as fashion is difficult. But that's where machine learning done right can come in. These predictions, in this case, create a predictive demand view, which is similar to the predictive customer view, but at product level. And that allows you to run the following sort of key optimizations. The key optimizations you should think about would be optimizing your buy. So how much product are you buying? What inventory do we need? Once we've got the inventory, where do we allocate it? So what stores do we put it in what quantities, and also the assortment of those products. And then finally, think about like pricing, and that's what we're doing here. If we understand the demand profile of products, we can control that demand profile. We can do two things. If you've got a product and you want to sell more of it, or you want to sell less of it because you might want it to last longer, you can play with price and you can play with promotion. So you can link it back into the customer AI capabilities and promote those products that you think people are likely to buy, who are in market for those products, to speed up sales. You can also play with the pricing of that, and that can be an accelerator for demand, depending on the price elasticity of that product. So that's what the demand AI solution is doing. And if you think about the output, very sort of similar in an obvious way to customer AI, but it's focused here on profit. So you're going to increase your return on capital, you're turning over your stock faster, but you are making a direct impact on the top line because you're always having the right product in the right place at the right time. So you're not missing any sales, and that means you're not letting your customers down, and you're maximizing their customer experience. In context, that means demand being modeled and suggesting optimal pricing, maximizing margins and sort of balancing the rate of sale with markdown, and then like really most pricing decisions and sort of stock allocation decisions can be made automatically and at scale which is the sort of thing that we could only kind of dream of doing as a merchandising team a few years ago, and that's how we'd use it in practice. Okay, so the final solution stack that we're going to talk about today is supply AI, and this targets the control element for the consumer, making sure that they can get the product they want, how they want it. So that could be same-day delivery, next-day delivery, in-store, pickup or return, all of those kind of different delivery options and shopping options that you want to make sure that they can experience. The predictions here, the prediction layer of supply AI is slightly different. It's making shorter-term predictions about like very short-term demand and also predictions in terms of like how fast things can be fulfilled. So think about like micro predictions, like how fast is it going to take to get this product from this part of my distribution center to this part and then to this part and this part, and how long is that going to take, and when do I need it there by to fulfill my customer demand. And those small predictions can be joined up to do the following things. They can optimize your warehouse. So firstly, like, where do I put product? Like, you know, distribution facilities are enormous. Having the product in the right place means you can get it through there quicker, and that's a real big, almost hidden win. But it can also help you work out how many people do I need to do that work and optimize my workforce. I've always got enough people, never too many, never not enough. And then that flows into logistics and like how many trucks do I need on the road, how many drivers do I need, all of those kind of things are all effectively driven by these like micro predictions around fulfilling that demand basically. And again, that makes a big profitability increase. So we're talking about a reduction in the movement of stock between locations in distribution centers. We're talking about reduction in miles on the road, vans and trucks on the road. And it's a real good one, this as well, because a lot of companies are looking at this area not only just to improve the experience the customer gets, but also like the sustainability impact of this is massive. If you can maximize the efficiency of your distribution center, you can fulfill your demand in a smaller footprint, which has an environmental impact, and the same in terms of like miles driven by your trucks, sort of fulfilling that. And then in practice, that means AI determining the optimal stock level, supply AI connecting to demand and customer AI, and then keeping like product in the right place at the right time, both from a store level, but also in a micro level in terms of like what bin on what aisle of what shelf of what etc. in my warehouse, right? And all of that joined up and thinking can be done by a central AI system, basically. And that's how you deliver connected retail.
All right, yeah, it really is as easy as that. So this is a really interesting slide as we just come to the close now. I think for us at Footasylum, the journey that we're on so far with it is that because we started with the customer AI stuff and are now really like exploring the other elements of the Peak stack. Actually, you'd be forgiven for thinking that marketing would be like the polar opposite of the supply and demand, but actually they have this sort of like flywheel analogy attached to them where if you're getting really good at creating demand on one side, then it leads to actually needing to fulfill that demand here. And then when you get really good at fulfilling demand, you can create some more demand and you have this sort of flywheel and you start throwing bits in and the flywheel speeds up. That's absolutely culturally how we are moving forward with Footasylum. And we believe because it's true omnichannel across the channels, it's breathing life into our stores, as well as taking massive wins with our digital online business as well. So yeah, inherently linked actually.
Great. And just as a quick wrap up, we just wanted to say there's a couple of examples of some of our customers, some names that you'll know, such as PepsiCo, ASOS. We work with a number of companies that aren't on this list as well. Really just to say that with the way we think of the sort of solution stack that we've built and this full stack AI system is that it should be applicable to any business, specifically any businesses that are dealing with consumers, any businesses that are dealing with product, and they have to generate demand for those products. They have to fulfill those products by buying them or making those products and then shipping them. And from a Peak perspective, we work with companies across retail, CPG, industrial manufacturing. So whatever industry you're in, you can use these technologies to great effect. And that is, to conclude, the way we would see the sort of the ideal tech stack for you guys and for those kind of businesses is that combination of the Peak AI system built on the AWS cloud and Intel's technology together to give you this scalable, secure, and outcome-focused capability that can push your business forward into the future. We will be on the Intel stand if you want to find out more, or you can go to our website, peak.ai/reinvent. And we've also got some time left after this for a Q&A session. If anyone wants to hang around and ask any questions, feel free to do that. Yeah, happy to field those now. It's quite hard to see all the hands flying up with the lights in our faces. We got any?
What kind of a timeline are you talking about for this progression of working through these pieces in place?
Cool. Yeah. That question was
Timeline question.
Yeah, timeline related. How long? I guess. Yeah. So one of the benefits of adopting a system that's there and like if it ready to go is that it cuts down all the peripheral work that you need to do. You need to get your data into it, and then you need to train the algorithms. Obviously with the Peak system being a multi-tenant SaaS product, it's common to everyone, like code is common to all of our customers, the software is the same, but the solutions are all trained on an individual basis. So every company has the solutions configured and trained for them. That process, depending on the solution, could take anywhere from 4 to 12 weeks. Tom mentioned that as we rolled out with Footasylum, it took 3 months to get all of it done and like live and in production, which for something like as game-changing as this is great, really. If you think about the effort it would take to swap out your CRM system or upgrade your email service provider, that's something that I think is going to see like the acceleration of the adoption of AI, because like it's almost a no-brainer. Why wouldn't you do it? It's an add-on. It's quick to do if you do it right, and so I think from a timeline point of view, it can be done rapidly. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah, one at the back in the middle.
So I have a question about the compute resources that you use. So I find that when you're doing the initial training data and the collection, you're building that model, your resources differ significantly than that of a model that's obviously complete, right? And so what do you do from a procurement perspective as it relates to that elasticity? Like I need a lot of compute, a lot of GPU utilization up front, but that corrective behavior is minimal compared to that training period. So how do you address that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So in the Peak system, the solutions are configured in that AI Studio component, which effectively allows you to stand up workspaces. In the background, those workspaces are supporting whatever you're training your models in. So you could be using Python or R or TensorFlow. You give that compute power to the workspace to do the initial model training, but then you don't need that once you put it into production. So you're effectively, the way our system works is you create the code for the trained models becomes sort of effectively saved down and then run in a workflow. And as it's running in a workflow, all that sort of elasticity of compute power and all that processing is just handled by the system, sort of thing. So it takes away all that sort of pain of having to sort of configure it yourself and monitor it and figure it out. It's all automated, and it makes sure you're sort of optimized for cost. Actually, from our customers' perspective, they don't even see that because they subscribe it's a SaaS product. They subscribe to use the product. It doesn't vary the cost of the product unless it tips them over a sort of a sort of resource threshold or something like that. But it's kind of in our interest to manage it as optimally as possible. If that helps answer the question.
So I have an add-on question to that. So as I understand that, that's a good answer. But do you have a mechanism in place that can validate whether an anomalous behavior is something that should be factored into the model, or if it is just that, right? And
Yeah.
do you have something that looks at those types of things and the analytics behind that?
Yeah, that's a really good one, actually. So that's one of the benefits of having these sort of configured solutions, because we've learned over time that there's a difference between like an anomalous behavior and a step change in behavior. So the Peak solutions have these detectors in them that are like anomaly detectors versus change point detectors. So a good example of that could be like forecasting demand for a product. Sometimes you'll see, if you see a spike and that spike is an anomaly, then the models they won't take that into account when they're retraining and staying calibrated. If it's detected it as a change point in demand, like a fundamental shift, which is possible, like if you change the price of a product, demand will shift. So we have to start discarding old data and only using short-term, like new data. So if you were a data scientist doing that manually, that's quite complicated for some of these use cases. But if you can use like pre-configured solutions like that, that's pretty cool, actually. Yeah. Thanks. So one down here.
So when you're developing this like single profile for a customer, and you're using their data to make predictive like marketing or promotions, how granular is that getting? Are you changing like the copywriting of promotions for a single user, or is it more like we're picking this promotion to send to them, whereas we might have sent a different one in the past?
That's a good one, actually. Tom can probably elaborate from a CRM perspective, but from a predictions perspective, what you're doing is you're making, the predictions are varied, so some of them are specific. What brand does this person prefer? Which are the most likely, what are the 200 most likely products they're going to buy next? But they're also sort of global, like what segment are they in? And then from a marketing perspective, what you sort of need to do is create creative for each of your global segments. And when you send a campaign, then you can you don't need that many different pieces of copy to supply like a huge customer base, because you'll pick the copy that's right for that segment. You would want to do that at a global level. You might have like 8 key segments, and you'll speak to one segment in one way, and then you'll take that copy and do it that way, and all of that creative. And then the specific products that are being recommended and the prices will be like on an individual basis. And the net effect of that is like hyper-personalization, but you don't need to create 1 million pieces of different copy for the 1 million customers in your database. You need to create maybe, like for a particular campaign, you might create 5 or 6 different ways of speaking to parents versus teenagers versus that kind of thing, which I think is how you guys have approached it.
I think it was a concern of ours at the start, actually, because we're getting excited about this hyper-personalization, but we're thinking the extra stress on resource to actually, have we got to like create loads more content for these guys? And actually, we haven't found that yet, but Richard sort of answered that really neatly. I think it depends on the size of the campaign, but ultimately we have, so with an email example, you'll have an email template that will populate with the products there. So the recommendation engine feeds that into an agile email template. So actually there's no heavy lifting for us then. The API is hooked up into our CRM system, and it just populates like that. So yeah, at the start we thought like a bit already our busy studio, we're busy making videos for posh presentations, don't need a load of extra work to do, but we've not actually found that's been the case, which is it's been pretty crucial, to be honest, because it means that we can just scale it. There's no lid to it then. Yeah.
And to add to that, it gives you the opportunity, that predictive customer view gives you the opportunity to, if you think about it conceptually, you can either sell the product or you can sell the customer. So you'll have always on communications where you're personalizing them. So your weekly newsletters or your periodic communications can all be delivered to people when they need them, but they're global and they're always on. But if you end up having like a particular promotion you want to run for a set of products, you can then use that to say, right, who are the customers that have a high propensity to buy that product, and are they in market, and I'm going to send it to them first. And so you effectively you're using that In my head, I imagine that as like a resource in the middle, and I can either be a product marketer and I'm selling the product, or I can be like a customer lifetime management sort of CRM person, and I'm selling the customer base, and that's sort of the different approach really you can use. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Thanks. Any other questions? No, don't think so. It's hard to see, but all right. Thank you very much for your time and attention. We're hanging around for 10 minutes if there are any more questions. So thanks for coming.